All right, good morning, everybody. It's Christian with AMT. We're going to go ahead and get into our retail panel training today. And today we're going to be talking about the Diabetic Predictor test. This is a pretty cool test. So let's just jump right in. Who needs this panel? Well, pretty much anybody that's overweight will need this panel. People that are overweight and maybe don't exercise very often, inactive, sitting in their chairs all day, i.e. myself. People with a family history of type 2 diabetes and even type 1 diabetes history can be a great thing to look at as a qualifier. A personal history of gestational diabetes, that's a female that has had diabetes during pregnancy. People with high blood sugar. And pretty much anyone that's concerned about their family and their personal health. Because remember, with our DNA screening panels, it's not just about the individual, it's about what they can pass on to their downline, so to speak. And anyone that has a desire to prevent type 2 diabetes, because this test will actually give us fixes for a lot of stuff. So what will the report reveal? Well, it'll reveal the personal or family genetic predisposition for type 2 diabetes. It'll also give us recommendations to prevent type 2 diabetes. Pretty exciting here. Again, similar to the other reports, lifestyle, nutrients, and diet recommendations. Now, I just got to tell you, this report's not going to say, hey, if you want to avoid getting type 2 diabetes, then just eat right and exercise. That's not what this report's going to tell us. And it also gives us these recommendations, and they work with people that are really at high risk. A lot of our panels will give us recommendations, of course, like you see here. But there becomes a point in time where it's like too late, you know what I mean, to prevent things from happening. Well, even if someone's at a high risk of getting type 2 diabetes, these recommendations can help slow that process down or even eliminate it altogether. A little FYI here, type 2 diabetes afflicts more than 415 million people, and it's one of the leading causes of death worldwide. So the diabetes panel is going to study 16 SNPs. And we're not going to go through every single one, but just know this, that all these 16 SNPs are going to be related, actually, to diabetes. And here's some interesting ones that I'll point out here. Well, first off, you can see the ones that are just saying protein processing. Those are a generic gene that handles proteins in different manners. And they're all related. Mutations in these genes will go ahead and give us an indication of a risk factor. The second one down, the NSIGF2, that's for type 1 diabetes. Mutations in that gene indicate that someone has a likelihood of getting type 1 diabetes. Some interesting ones, though. This WFS1, this is actually relating to the Wolfram syndrome. This is a gene where if there's a mutation here, people can suffer from low-frequency hearing loss. And we're going to go down to, keep following down to ADCY5. Again, I'm not going to go through every one of these. I just want to point out some of the ones that are kind of interesting to me. The ADCY5, mutations in that gene can give us jerks and twitches and tremors in our limbs, neck, and face. I personally can experience this a little bit in my left eye. If my blood sugars are off, my left eye kind of twitches a little bit, or it feels like my face muscles around my left eye are twitching. So if any of you have any issues with your blood sugar, you may notice the same thing, a jerk or a twitch when your blood sugars are off. Very interesting one, the JAZF1. That's dealing with prostate cancer. And the H-hexide here deals with insulin processing, and pregnant women can result can be low birth weight to their babies. All right. Another one here, these KCNs. These are pretty serious mutations here. So they look at these SNPs, and they have found out that people with mutations in this gene, in this group of genes, the J11 and the Q1, they deal with the processing of potassium, and Bartter syndrome, which is actually a group of rare disorders that affect the kidneys, and the KCNQ1 mutations, when they've done autopsies and things of that nature, they have found that people that have had fatal cardiac arrests or sudden death, they have found that there sometimes is a mutation in these genes. So the reason why I point these two out is because of this. I joke about this, about driving down the road and you see that guy, not me by the way, jogging down the road. He's got his T-shirt, around his neck, and he's got the six-pack abs, and he's in his 30s. He's looking good, just jogging his butt off, right? Well, that's the kind of guy that really needs this test, simply because those are the kind of guys, the ones that look the healthiest, that have a sudden death. They like to attribute to an aneurysm or natural causes or heart disease they find out later. But you can be as healthy as a horse, but if your body's not processing potassium, and if you don't have enough potassium going through your system, your heart will fail, and you will just die. Now, the one that I really want to point out here at the end, I will do in a minute. Let's talk about the FTO down here. This one is actually called the fat gene. Mutations in this gene speak to our body mass and our likelihood for obesity. So if you ever met me in person, you'll know that I have a mutation in the FTO gene. But the one that I really want to point out here is this TCF7L2. This particular mutation is the most significant marker for type 2 diabetes risk. So pretty much everybody that has type 2 diabetes, because of hereditary conditions, will have a mutation in this gene. I know we went fast to that, but again, it's not important to memorize the SNPs. It's just important to know that this test is very, very thorough and looks at the 16 markers that can help predict diabetes, and it's pretty darn accurate. Here's what the report looks like. It looks a little bit different than the last report that we've seen. And here's what it is. This is a real patient report here. Okay, I want to point out here a couple things here. This was done, actually, a report came back July 3rd. The sample was sent in, 10 days or so before. These reports come pretty quick. So no parental history was reported of type 2 diabetes on this patient. But look at this. The risk of type 2 diabetes, they actually give you a percentage. Okay? And so this person actually falls in the medium category, which means that it's above average. Okay? And the ones that have higher risk obviously will be over into the red. Now, this also looks a little bit different. This provider, by the way, this is not my report. Okay, so it lists the SNPs that they're looking at, and with the other reports, if you recall, we've got our heterozygous and homozygous results, which means either one, allele saying yes or dominant, and the homo being 2. So here's what it is. If it's red, okay, it'll tell you. It says two copies of the risk SNPs have been detected in the genes, and it lists the ones where they're homozygous here. It doesn't say the word homozygous. This is meant to be a more user-friendly, layman-type report. Okay, and you'll see why in a few minutes. But look at this. The red ones are bad. Okay, the black ones are good. All right. So let's go through it. So it tells us here, remember we told you we'd get lifestyle recommendations and diet stuff? Get this. So this gene, because it had a homozygous result, they're actually making a recommendation here, aerobic exercise. And it also gives us some recommendations for further testing or for other consults. And look at this, inquire about age-early onset diabetes. This is for the doctor. The doctor would actually inquire about this. And also the doctor would start to ask questions about kidney health and their hearing and vision. Remember, this WFS1 is that rare disorders involving the kidney. So it makes sense that they would recommend to talk about the kidneys. And look at this. This is kind of cool. So it's telling these people, the patient, that look, because of these mutations, these are the recommendations to avoid getting type 2 diabetes. So look, it even tells them, have a diet rich in zinc. Okay? Down here, it talks about, it says, individuals with this genotype are more likely to lose weight in weight loss programs, and it gives you an actual Mediterranean diet recommendation, which is low carbs. You can read that on there. Lots of different supplements. Okay? And it also says that this individuals with this genotype are likely to be more sensitive to the negative effects of fats and refined carbs. So it also says consider the appropriateness of metformin. So this person right here, by the way, does not have type 2 diabetes, but I know them and they are on the borderline, they call it. Okay? So look at this. Aerobic exercise, yoga practice, meditation practice. It even tells you how many hours of sleep to get per night and tells them to try to manage their stress and eat a lot of legumes. Okay? So here's the cool thing, is that it also gives you some definitions down here. For example, the Mediterranean diet, since it recommended that, focuses on whole grains, lean protein, and moderate amounts of dairy products and olive oils. Okay? And there's also a genistein recommendation. Flavonoids in legumes and herbs promotes the beta cell function. Now, what's interesting about this is that every report will list these definitions, okay, if they're applicable. If it doesn't recommend metformin in the report, then it probably won't put that down here. But this report is absolutely tailored to this particular patient. It's amazing. It's a great, great report. It's a great test. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll go ahead and get to some questions.